how do you break out of old patterns of thinking? Because it's not easy. According to Sir Ken Robinson, he's got one of the most viewed TED Talks on creativity. By the time we reach 18, most creativity has been educated out of us. And then all of a sudden, we're asked to be creative again. That's not easy. Innovation is so critical to the NHS. I think it's at the heart of what you do. Of course, it's about care, and it's about compassion, but it's also about getting the best possible outcomes for patients. And you can't do that without constantly innovating the technology that you use, innovating the way that you operate as a hospital, innovating the way that you lead and work as a team. Most of the time, 8 hours in a day, 480 minutes, you're spending most of that time, 95% of it, in the left brain world. And the left brain world is like an 800-pound gorilla that will stop you from testing a new idea, will stop you from speaking up in a meeting about doing something differently, will stop you from having the courage to challenge the status quo. And so the theory is that sometimes we need to get more relaxed and access the right side of our brain. Of course, this is not about compromising the health and safety of each other or indeed patients. And so it's about smart risk-taking, creating experiments. It could be as simple as, what can we do to remove different processes that are slowing down decision-making? Or how could we run our meetings smarter and faster so they're more energizing and more productive? Shortcut number one, and it's something I want you to think about, which is, are you a day one culture or a day two culture? Most organizations are split between day one or day two. A day one culture is really a mindset, a spirit, an attitude. What it means if you're day one is that it's never business as usual. You hate status quo. You hate proxies and processes that no longer do what they intended to do and now stop you from doing your best work. You spend all your day doing busy work rather than your best work. A day one mindset and a day one culture is about smart experimentation. It's about testing out new ideas. If you've got an idea, don't even have an idea, have a hypothesis. And so have a hypothesis, have a hunch, and then say, okay, well, what am I going to do to test that? Create a very small, cheap pilot to put that into action to then get validity. Does it work or does it not work? So this is day one. Day one is really a spirit. It's about head and heart. It's an attitude of, we want tomorrow to be better than today. Otherwise, if we're not thinking that way, we become day two. And day two is the opposite. Day two is about SEP, somebody else's problem. It's about hippos, the highest paid person's opinion. When the hippo walks into the meeting, everybody else stays silent, looking for validation from the hippo. See somebody going like that. SEP, misery monsters, blame throwers, status quo defenders. All of these different characters are the enemy of day one and will force you into day two. The danger of day two is the second law of thermodynamics, atrophy. That if you keep doing day two, business as usual, okay, well, we're still doing the same procedures as we did 3 years ago, and we still run the meetings the same way and the feedback the same way. The danger is it creates mediocrity, and we get slower and slower. There's so many barriers to innovation out there. I think one of the biggest is culture. Culture can reject innovation like a virus. Other big barriers and obstacles to innovation include fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of the unknown. And so I think there's a couple of steps that leaders can put into practice. And number one is you need to role model those leadership behaviors and create a culture, a true culture of experimentation and iteration. There also needs to be psychological safety. It's an easy word to say, but do people feel safe? Do they feel safe to come up with ideas, to be wrong, to try new things out? You've got to create conditions where different mindsets, different experiences come together and collide. Innovation happens at the margins. And so that's why today is such a great forum. And when you do this on a quarterly basis, mixing up the different tables, you create that catalytic reaction, which can give you a fresh perspective and a new idea. So let's do a challenge. I was in Italy last week and I brought back a case of Prosecco. Now this is a very important part of creating conditions for innovation and creativity to work, because there needs to be some fun, some recognition, some type of incentive. In fact, there's 3 things you can do at a cultural level. 1, crowdsource ideas from everywhere, up and down and across the hierarchy. So crowdsource ideas. Ideas should not be status-driven or hierarchical-driven. Number 2, diversity, diversity, diversity. Diversity of cognitive styles, diversity of experiences, diversity of gender. And number 3, idea recognition and celebration, not just of success, but also recognizing and celebrating a failure. Because intelligent failure is such an important part of the DNA of being creative. Most good ideas start as bad ideas, and so it's really important to have a simple process to validate an idea. And an idea can be validated or it can be invalidated. Both outcomes are good. This challenge will put your creativity and innovation skills into action now. The objective is to build the world's tallest tower using your spaghetti pieces. You should build your tower on the table. You cannot hang it off the ceiling, although that is creative. You can only use the resources that I've given you. So we have constraints like real life. So 20 minutes is the time constraint, 20 pieces of spaghetti. Some of them may have broken a bit. You're going to have to improvise like real life. Sellotape and some scissors as well. So the courage to innovate. This is the Finnish. In Finland, they call it sisu, Viking spirit. And that's what I want you all to build today. We tiptoe around on eggshells. We're scared of being embarrassed, we're scared of saying the wrong thing, we're scared of trying new things, we're scared of taking a risk. These are all innovation killers. And so it's important in my talks to give people the space, the safety and the fun to just relax, to open up, to let go and to experiment. And what they find is when they do that, actually the innovation and creativity behaviors kind of take care of themselves. Because the good news is, as a human being, creativity and innovation is part of your DNA. It might be dormant, but if you create the right conditions, it will catalyze itself. I've never seen so much sellotape in a room. It's so important to give people the space and the psychological safety to think differently. We're about to identify the tallest. We've got some really creative solutions to this exercise. Can you think of the reason why kids do so well at this? Exactly, that's, they have the creativity, it has not been educated out of them yet. 65 inches, 67, 63, that's 62, 63. Oh, no! Oh, no! I'd give 3 pieces of advice to your leaders. Number 1, I think it's absolutely key to create a strong sense of we. In fact, I think leadership is about we, not me. And number 2 is there needs to be a conversation around what is innovation and ensuring that people have the tools, the resources to turn ideas into action. And then finally, number 3 is we spend so much of our time, our life, our careers in an office. So I think number 3 is about celebrating success. So I think we have a winner. There's all sorts of unintended consequences of innovation, and sometimes those surprises can also lead to new innovations. What I would say is always learn from the outcomes. So learn from the known outcomes, but also have an open mind and see if you can translate some of the surprises into new learnings as well. So it becomes a sort of continuous process of experimentation and a culture of improvement. The easiest thing to do in life is react. The second easiest thing is to respond. The most difficult thing to do is to initiate. Become a team of courageous doers and initiative takers. The key point to remember though is not taking a risk is a risk.